Hey everyone, welcome back to the third installment episode of the Ben and Danny show. We hope you enjoyed the last session where we kind of talked about downloading and importing assets as well as modifying sprites, and then we discussed the pixel perfect camera. So if you want to watch the episode, you can find the link on the screen now, or I'll post it in the comments section later. So, Ben, what are we doing in today's session then?
So that's a good question because what we did last time is we had a look at tile maps, right? And we specifically looked at sprites, and we looked at sprite editing. So we're going to spend a bit more time on sprites and how we can actually place sprites in the scene. The reason this is, I wouldn't say quite important, but we'll come across this more in the series where we have characters and all kinds of stuff in our game. So we're going to have a look a bit more in detail about sprites. We're going to have a look at prefabs. So there's this thing in Unity. Well, there's this class of things called prefabs in Unity, and they're quite common. You come across them quite a lot, and they're also very, very, very useful things. Prefabs never used to be. Well, they've always been a thing in Unity, but they've never been up until I think Unity 2018. They were kind of not the best.
Yeah.
We came into 2018, and the prefab, the updates they did to prefabs were amazing. So we're going to talk a bit about what prefabs are and why they're so useful, the benefits you can have making a game with prefabs. And the last thing on our list of things to go through is an introduction to scripting. So as you know, what makes games interesting is the fact that they're interactive. I mean, so far we've introduced things, but nothing's really interactive. We're going to start looking at scripting and how we can actually build some interactivity into our games, whether it's just some moving stuff or having
moving stuff,
moving stuff, or whether it's a character kind of jumping around the screen, which at some point we're going to get on to moving the character and stuff. But today we're going to go through very basic, very kind of entry level scripting. If you don't have any experience programming, then this should be fine. I mean, we're going to go. Yeah, I love the corgi back. 10 out of 10 production value. Yes, Beth. The corgi. Absolutely love the corgi. He's a mascot of the office now. So, but yeah, we're going to have a look at scripting and kind of get into how to do scripting and the editor and all this kind of stuff. If you have no experience programming, that's fine. You should be okay. Equally, if you have some experience with software engineering, programming, stuff like this, then it still should be fine. And
either way, you'll be able to pick it up quite quickly. Like, the concepts we're going to present are relatively straightforward and easy to understand. So I wouldn't worry if you're not experienced, or even if you have some knowledge of coding.
Yeah, and as Danny says, I think it's fairly. I mean, the key thing I've said in all of these is, this is a very gentle introduction to games development, and I'm making it as gentle as possible, especially when it comes to scripting. Scripting is one of the hardest things for some people to pick up, but I think if you approach it in the right way, it's not too hard, and we'll see hopefully in this session. But it should be fine. But yeah, that's what we're going to go over. So we're going to go, just to recap, sprites, prefabs, and then scripting. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what we're going to cover today. So I guess on that note, we'll switch to the view of Unity. This time, I didn't make the mistake of starting up Unity during the stream. Because Unity takes forever to load, right?
It does.
Yeah. I don't know, I think it's stuff to do with like loading assets and all that kind of stuff. But
well, especially if you have a large asset pack within your project, then it's having to download each individual kind of component and sprite and all of that. But yeah.
yeah, it takes a while, but if you just leave it and it loads up, that's fine. So yeah, we've got the Unity editor here, and there's some things you can recognize, like the hierarchy. We've gone over the scene view, the inspector. I'll just move the inspector a bit over here so we can see more of the scene view. Also, while we're on the topic of the editor, if you don't like this particular layout of the hierarchy here, the scene here, and that kind of stuff, so these tabs you can actually click and drag. So you can click and drag this hierarchy, and if for some reason you wanted the hierarchy here, which I wouldn't advise.
We were having this conversation the other day. You were very confused by my layout because it was completely different to what Ben's layout is.
Yeah, so the kind of layout I'm used to is the Unity default kind of layout of things. It's been that way ever since like Unity 4. I think back then you didn't really have much options in terms of layout, but nowadays, yeah, you can click and drag and you can put the hierarchy wherever you want. So it's going to dock here, you can put it over here. I used to know a guy who I was telling Danny this the other day, right? I used to know a guy who used to do this, and he put all his windows here on the right. Okay, even the game and the asset store, he had everything over here.
Oh, no.
And then he had the scene view here, and it was just the most horrendous thing. Awful. Don't do that. But if you ever want to change this back to the default one, if say for example you've messed it up like this, you can go to Window.
Messed it up.
Yeah. You can go to layouts, and there's a couple here you can change into. So you can do layouts 2x3, which gives you this, for example. There's the default one, which is what I like, which is this. You have the hierarchy here, the project here, the console, you've got the scene, game, asset store. I oftentimes close this, and then we've got the inspector. Anyways, let's get on to kind of what we're doing today. So as I mentioned last time, the one thing we want to have a look at this time is putting some kind of collectible coins or diamonds or whatever into the scene. I mean, a big staple of 2D platformer games, which is the kind of game we're developing, is coins. Also, you might have noticed that we very quickly made a level using the tile map stuff, and we're going to talk a bit more about this and how to make layers of tile maps, maybe in a future video. I'm not too sure yet where that's going to fit in, but we'll cover it eventually. But yeah, hopefully if you followed all this, you've got a nice little level that you've made. We made this. It's not much of a level. This probably needs to be a bit shorter, this little thing here. But yeah, it's just a random level, right? And I'm just clicking and dragging through this. So yeah, we're going to actually, as I said, in 2D platformers, we often have coins. For example, I don't know, something like Super Mario World. I don't know if you can think of any, Danny, because my mind has just gone blank.
Yeah, I could think of like Mario Bros. Collecting the coins. Yeah. Oh my god! For some reason, you put that in my mind, and I can't think of any other collectibles in games.
Yeah, well, I'm sure everyone watching.
Sonic rings.
Sonic, yeah. Sonic has rings. Yeah. For some reason, like the many games I've played over the years, I can think of is Mario. So, but yeah, Mario, for example, has loads of coins, and you can collect the coins, and it adds to your like coin meter. And then when you get 100 coins, you get an extra life. We're going to have a look at implementing something like that today. So we're not going to have a look at how to collect the coins and increment score, but we are going to have a look at how to put those coins in the level and maybe animate them slightly. So we're going to have a look at how to do that, and that's why we're covering sprites, prefabs, and scripts, and it will all kind of make sense when we actually get into it. So I think the first thing we need to do is go to the sprites folder. So what we're going to do first is actually put some diamonds into the game itself. So if we go to assets and sprites, so we have the Kings and Pigs pack, so you should have this in your project as well. If you don't, that's fine. Just watch the previous episode and it goes through all this. There are a bunch of different folders in here, characters mostly. So you've got King, Pig, Pig throwing a box for some reason. There's all kinds of stuff here. But one of them is this live and coins. I think this is meant to be lives and coins, but if we go in here, we've got a bunch of different sprites. We've got Big Diamond Hit, we've got Big Diamond Idle, we've got some numbers, we've got some small diamonds and hearts and all this kind of stuff. So we're probably going to use this big diamond island idol right now. Before we actually get into this, you'll notice that when you open this up. So if I open this up by double clicking it, you'll notice that this is actually many diamonds, right? And this might throw you at first. You might go, okay, well, okay, Ben, you're talking about diamonds, right? You're talking about putting just one diamond in the scene and stuff. But why is there, what's that, 10 diamonds in this? And this is because it's an animation. It's a kind of, we were talking about tile sets last time where we have all the or texture atlases they're called, where we have all the possible sprites in one file, and then the game engine kind of chops bits from that tile set to actually put stuff on screen. The way animations work in 2D is usually we have this, right? So if you looked at this and kind of followed it to the right, you can kind of see that this is an animation of it looks like a diamond kind of gleaming or rotating or something. To give you a better idea of this, let's go have look at the pig character. So there's different sprite sheets here for different animations. So the attack sprite sheet, this is an animation, right? We have 5 sprites here. So we have this, and you can see that over time this kind of pig character is doing a kind of, it looks like a kind of uppercut, I think. looks like a kind of uppercut, right? But this is an animation. So what we have on our hands with that diamond stuff is an animation, right? Now, for the purpose of not getting into animation at the moment, we are going to not actually put in an animated version of the diamond. However, later on we are going to cover animation, but we're going to skip it just today, just so in the interest of time, and it will have its own little episode, so don't worry too much about that. So as you can see, we have on our hands here, we have a kind of animation of this diamond kind of gleaming over time, right? And we want to take one of these, okay, and just put it in the scene. So we're not interested in the animation at the moment. We don't care if the diamond is gleaming, rotating, whatever. we don't care for the animation. We will get into that later, so don't worry about it. But for now, what we want to do is just take one of these diamonds, preferably maybe this one or that one.
I like the shiny one. Yeah.
Yeah. Which one do you think? Do you think this one, Danny?
Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, the one, the third one in. Is that third one in?
Third one? This one here? Yeah. Okay. So we'll put this one in the environment. And also, this is a pretty good lesson. Sometimes, right, when you download assets from itch.io or something, you'll get something in a sheet like this, and you go, oh, damn it, I just want one of those images. So we're going to have a look at how to do that, and it's very similar to what we saw last time.
Yes, best shiny one for the win.
Yeah. So we're gonna close that. What we're gonna do is so this process here is very similar to the one that we did last time. So remember, we had that tile set and we chopped it up into little cells, and then we used that to paint into the scene. So we're going to do something similar. So if we go here on the big diamond sheet, so we click on that, and it shows up the import settings in the inspector. So we're going to do very similar things to what we did last time. So we're going to change this from default to sprite, because this is a sprite. Now you might think, right, and this is where it gets a bit tricky. You might think, okay, Ben, you're talking about putting one diamond into the scene. So this should be single, right? That should be exactly right.
You only want one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now in every other scenario, yes, that's what we'd go with. But in this case, what we need to do is we need to set it to multiple, because we're going to chop this sprite sheet up into multiple sprites. So this doesn't necessarily mean what the type of sprite is. It's more, what are we going to do with this? Does this image contain multiple sprites, or does it contain one sprite? So what we're going to do is we're going to click multiple, because this does have multiple sprites in there. We're going to set this to 32, just because that's what we had before, and our game has 32 pixels per unit. If you're a bit confused about this, don't worry, it is quite a confusing metric, but essentially, as it says here, it just means how many pixels in the sprite correspond to one unit in the world. Now, the guy who made this pack just so happened to set it to 32. If you're working with another pack, it might be 64, it might be 128, it could be something completely different. But in this case, don't worry about it too much, it's just 32. All this kind of stuff, the mesh type and all that, just leave that. We're going to set this to point, no filter, and we're going to turn off compression. So just if you get stuck, just pause the video here and set them to this. Then we're going to click apply. So now we have a sprite, right? Now at the moment, if I click and drag this in, you'll see that. Let me just do this here. So if we bring this into the main level, I think this has. Oh no, it hasn't done it. So let's just pop this into the level here. I don't know why it's doing this. It sometimes does this for me. It's basically having issues putting this sprite into the level. So how can we fix this? If we click on this and go to the sprite editor. Now the sprite editor, like we did last time, all the sprite editor allows you to do is chop this thing up into multiple sprites. So what we're going to do is we are going to click slice like we did before, and we're going to go to grid by cell size, because we know the cell size. It just so happens to be 18 by 14. If you get confused about where I got this number from, have a look at the name of this thing. It's big diamond tile 18 by 4. So it's saying that there's each sprite in this sprite sheet is 18 by 14 pixels long. So we're going to set that to 18 by 14. And we're going to click slice. So now what this has done is it's a bit off center, but this has chopped this thing, which is many sprites, into separate sprites. So I can click on each one of these, and these are all separate sprites. So all I do is I click apply up here to actually apply it. And now what we have on our hands is not one image with many sprites in it, but actually many sprites. I mean, that's quite confusing. Essentially what we've done is we've took an image which contains many sprites into many sprites. So if you see this little, it looks like a play button here. If you click on this, you can actually see that these are all separate sprites. If we click on this here, you can even see the animation there in the bottom right.
Oh, that's so cute.
You can see the kind of animation going on. But yeah, all we have to do is we open up this little thing here, and we should be able to get the shiny one like this, click and drag it into our world. So you can see that what I'm doing is I'm just clicking from here. I'm clicking and dragging this one, which we want. So I'll do this again just to make sure you get it. If you click and drag this one, you'll notice that you'll get the default one, and it will ask you to create an animation. Don't do this because we're going to get into animation later on. Just click this little play button thing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag one of these. So we're only dragging one sprite into the environment. So here we can click and drag this into the environment. And now we have a sprite. We have a sprite in our game, and it is quite small. As you can see, I have to zoom in quite a lot to show you this sprite. But you can drag this around the game world as much as you like. So maybe we don't want it here. Maybe we want it somewhere else. The other thing you can do is you can rotate this, so we're going to put it maybe here, for example. I'll put this here. If I want to make this a little bit bigger, we can. So you can do this many ways. You can click and drag the rectangle like this, and make it bigger this way.
Big diamond.
Big diamond. Yeah. So we can do it this way, for example. We can also. So I'll show you a bit more of what that pixels per unit is. If I set this pixels per unit to 16, you can see that this gets bigger. If I set this to 8, it'll get even bigger, So I'm going to leave this on. I'll put it on 16. Oh, actually, no, that's going to be confusing. Let's put it on 32, and I'll scale this up just by clicking and dragging, because that's a bit more easy. So I'm going to set these to 1.5. You can make it as big as you like. So we finally got a shiny diamond in here, and we could change the name of this to maybe diamond 1. And if you want to duplicate this and move it into the, if you want to put another diamond in this environment, you could do the same thing. Open this up, click and drag, put it in, scale it, or right? You could click on this diamond and press Control D. I think it's Control D, or yeah. So there's this duplicate thing here. We can just press Control D and then click and drag this, and now we've got another one. So we're just duplicating it. So maybe we'll put one here, and maybe we'll put a diamond here. So we have 3 diamonds in our game, and the idea is, that the character would jump into these and collect the diamond. The diamond would disappear, and you would get a, I don't know, +1.
With duplication, Ben, so when you duplicate, you're literally just copying it, the state as it is, with it enlarged. You're not going back to the default.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. So if I if I make this really big, okay, and now the scale is 6. If I do Control D, it's a copy of that object. It has the same state as it did initially, and this becomes important when we talk about prefabs, and I'll get into that. There is some other things. I'm going to skip a bit on Z order, so we're gonna talk about that a bit later in another episode. But yeah, let's say we have 3 diamonds, right, like this. And we've now chopped them up into separate sprites, and we now have 3 diamonds in our game. Hooray, yippee! So what I want to do is I think probably the best way to describe this, I might cover prefabs second and do scripting first. So we want to look at prefabs and scripting, and I've talked a lot about these 2 things, scripting and prefabs. And I've yet to kind of go into detail of what they are. But I think what we'll do is we'll go into scripting first, and then it'll make a lot more sense when we get into prefabs. But just to give you a kind of taster of what prefabs are, I'll present you with a problem, right? So say we have 3 diamonds, okay? And we can change things about these diamonds. We can make them bigger, right? So if, say, for example, you wanted to change all 3 of these diamonds, okay? So you wanted to change them all to twice the same scale. So you could go here and set the scale to 2, then click on this one and set the scale to 2 on this one. And, you could do it for this one. That's fine. We've got 3 diamonds. All good in the hood, right? Let's say there are 500 diamonds in your level. Well, okay, now you've got to click and do that same process for 500 diamonds in your level. Sure, you could sit there all day and do that. That's perfectly fine. And some of you in the audience might think, oh, okay, well, that's fine, but you're just going about it a strange way. You could, for example, just select them all here and set the scale to 2 like this, and hey, look, you've now got, yes, you could do that, right? But let's say, for example, you want to do this across many levels. Let's say you have 50 levels in your game, and you want to change the scale. You not only want to change the scale, for example, you want to flip them or something, right? Suddenly it becomes a really hard problem, right? Because you've now got many diamonds in your level, you've got many levels, and you want to change stuff about those diamonds. So it's suddenly quite an issue. You'd be sitting here all day.
You'd be there for hours. It'd be such tedious work.
Yeah.
And like trying to keep everything consistent would just be a nightmare.
Yeah. Now, like I said, that's just a taster of what prefabs kind of solve. And we'll show you how prefabs solve this problem, right? Prefabs aren't really, in a small game like this, you could probably get away with not using prefabs. But, one of the things in this series we want to show you is what the best practices are. So when you write a big game with lots of assets and tons of different classes of things, and variants of prefabs and all this kind of stuff, you need to know about that kind of stuff. And that's why we're going to show you what prefabs are. But that's the problem that prefab solves. And on that note, I'll show you prefabs afterwards. But before we do, we'll go into a little bit of scripting, okay? But yeah, just keep that in the back of your mind. So we have this folder in assets called scripts. So I'm just going to double click in here. And by the way, if you don't have this scripts folder, you can right click and go to create and go to folder and just create a folder called scripts. But we're going to go into the scripts folder. This, by the way, you could put your script wherever you like, but we're just keeping it organized. So I want to get into why we want to do scripting, right? So like I said at the beginning, the whole idea of a game is that it's interactive. We have things moving around. We can move a character around the level. And maybe something we want to do is have diamonds that are collectible, right? So we jump into our diamond with our character, the diamond disappears, and we do something with the score or something like that. Another thing we could do is we can make these diamonds a bit more, I don't know, a bit more interesting, because at the moment, if we just click play, we're just going to get a game where everything kind of seems lifeless, right? I mean,
it's all static. Nothing's moving. Nothing's doing anything.
Yeah,
it's just lifeless.
And this is a bit zoomed in, right? So I'm gonna probably let's like zoom out a bit here. So I'm not sure how you. Let's do that. Yeah. Okay. So here we have, a game, like Danny said, right? I mean, look at this game. It's not much of a game. I'm just manually moving the camera around here, but these diamonds, they don't look like collectibles. They almost look like part of the background. You know what I mean? So how do we distinguish that these diamonds are collectible and they're not just part of the background? Well, there's many ways of doing it. We could put an animation on them, right? We could put like a ring around them or something. We could change the color over time. There's all kinds of ways we could signify that these diamonds are collectible, and you can jump into them and collect coins. But one of the most common ways in games to kind of signify that an item's picked up, and if you've played quite a lot of games like we have, you'll probably notice this, is that the items kind of bob up and down. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like, it would kind of be like this. This diamond on the left would kind of do something like this, and that way, we could see that this item might be collectible. That's just one way of kind of signifying.
It kind of gives it life within the game. It kind of makes it a bit more just engaging and interactive.
Yeah, it's there's something about like just having moving stuff in your levels that kind of shows that, hey, this isn't just a pretty picture. We can actually collect things and interact with the environment. So as you can see, this is just moving up and down. And you might be wondering, how am I doing this? Well, I'm quite literally just moving this with my mouse. I can make it go really up, I can make it go really down, but I'm just dragging the Y position here. Now just have a look at what's going on here. So say this diamond is at Y4. So as you can see here, the Y value of this is 4. Now it could slowly move up to, let's say, I don't know, 5, and then come all the way back down to 4. So all we're doing is we're just changing this Y position from 4 slowly up to 5 and then back down to 4. So, I mean, we could sit here all day and move these manually with our mouse, but it wouldn't be much of a game, I guess. So the question is, how do you automate this process? How do we make the game or the computer do this for us? How do we make the Y position go slowly up to 5 and then back down to 4? How do we do that? How do we do that process? Well, this is what scripting's for. Scripting allows you to interact with the environment, allows you to move stuff around, allows you to make the character move, it allows you to do all kinds of different stuff. And scripting is pretty much what makes games interactive, because all the interactivity, or at least in some games, most of the interactivity is done with scripting. So anyway, I've talked a lot about why we're doing scripting and all that kind of stuff, but I just wanted to kind of frame what we want to do. Okay, so we want to make these diamonds just move up and down, kind of bob slightly. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to do it with scripting. So how do you create a script? That's the first thing, right? How do you actually create a script? Well, it's pretty straightforward. All you do is you just right click and go to create. So we're right clicking in the project and we go to create, and there's something here called C# script. Okay, so just click on this and it will allow you to type in the script name. So I'm going to call this maybe something like Diamond Bob or something. Right?
Diamond Bob.
Diamond Bob. Sounds like a kind of gangster from the East End or something. Diamond Bob.
Diamond Bob.
Diamond Bob.
That's a great like character name, I feel.
Diamond Bob, yeah. Maybe Bob's not the best. Let's do something like
you could do bobbing, like
diamond bobbing or something, right? So we have a script called diamond bobbing. Now we've created a script that's pretty straightforward. How do we edit a script? Well, again, that is also pretty straightforward. So you just double click on this. So you can either right click and go to open, okay, or just double click. And now what happens is we're firing up Visual Studio. So we're not in Unity anymore. We are actually in a code editor, which is taking a while to load, but we are now in a code editor for our script. And just ignore my alert here about my Microsoft account problems. But we are now editing this script called diamondbobbing.cs. So this is the code for that script. So we're in Visual Studio, so you can switch between Unity and Visual Studio like this. And the idea is, you would edit your code here, and you'd go back to Unity, and it would be saved, and you can,
So with using Visual Studio, is that the only code editor you can use? Is that the only code editor that's compatible with Unity, or can you use like, I don't know, Notepad++?
So I mean that's a really good question, because some people don't like Visual Studio. Some people hate it; they despise it. I mean, I used to I think back in the days of the old Unity editor, we didn't have Visual Studio. We had something called Mono Develop, and when we made the transition from Mono Develop to Visual Studio, I was like, oh, I don't want to use Visual Studio, but now I swear by it. I love Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code. That's also a good editor. But it's a good question. So the answer to that is you can use whatever editor you like. I think you can set up Notepad++ to work with it. Visual Studio is the kind of default editor that comes with Unity, but you can actually set up different editors. So, for example, if you go to here to edit and you go to, I think it's preferences, this will give you a bunch of things that you can edit about the Unity environment. So one of them is external tools, and one of these is external script editor. So my external script editor at the moment is Visual Studio Community. I have other ones like Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio 2015. So you can change between these editors. So if I wanted to, for example, use Visual Studio Code instead, I would just click here, and then when I double click a script in the project window, it would open up that instead of Visual Studio. So yeah, you can use different editors.
But would you suggest using like Visual Studio, Community as the best one to use?
So I would say for this series, I would stick with Visual Studio. Generally, I think Visual Studio is a great tool for Unity development, partially for some of the features it allows you to do. So, for example, it allows you to attach this thing to Unity and actually debug your code in real time. And there's a bunch of different stuff you can do in Unity and Visual Studio. And they've built a plugin for Visual Studio that works quite well with Unity itself. So I would say my recommendation is purely from a point of, I quite like Visual Studio, but I do recognize that some people actually hate Visual Studio.
I mean, I use Visual Studio. I think it is already compatible with Unity, so you might as well just use it. And it's downloaded when you download the Unity Hub as well, so just makes life easy.
Exactly. I mean, it comes shipped with Unity. You don't have to do much. You just double click it, boom, everything opens. All works fine. I found with like Visual Studio Code and stuff like that, sometimes it just breaks for whatever reason, but you can use other editors if you like. So yeah, let's get into scripting, right? So I want to firstly run through what some of this means. So I imagine this is quite daunting for some of you who have no programming experience. That's fine. Some of these words will probably kind of confuse you, like, what is this stuff? What is this stuff? So I would say don't worry too much about the details going on here. So I think it's quite easy to get stuck up on the details here, like what does void mean, and what's a class and all this kind of stuff. Don't worry too much about that. What we're going to focus on today really is just these two things in this class here. So as you can see, diamond bobbing is the name of our script. Let's talk a little bit more about what these things actually mean. So there are two functions here. Now, a function, if by the way, if you want to get into more programming, we do have another series on this channel. That I think it's the Ben and Chris show, and we talk about building stuff in Python that covers quite a lot of the stuff that we're going to go through, like functions and return types and variables and this kind of stuff. And I think the purpose of this series is not to teach you programming, but rather games development. But we are going to show you what these two things are, because these two things are quite important, and these are the two functions you used the most in scripting. So there are two functions in this thing. One's called start, right, and one is called update. Okay, so as you can see from these comments, start the code that exists in between these two brackets. Okay, and again, don't worry about what all of this means. So using Unity engine, public class diamond bobbing, mono behavior, and all this stuff, don't worry too much about what that means. Okay, all we really want to focus on is the code that exists between these two braces is going to be run at when we click play. Okay, so when we first start the game, the code inside of these two brackets is going to be run. So this is quite useful for when we start a game. For example, sometimes at the beginning we want to show a menu and say, hey, do you want to look at the options? Do you want to start 2-player mode? Do you want to start single player mode? Usually when we want to do that kind of stuff, where we start up the game, we want the code to do something. This is the function. So all this happens, all that happens with this is it just runs that code in between these two braces whenever the game starts. Now, double slash just means a comment, so that code won't be run. But there are a bunch of different stuff we can do with scripting. Again, I'm not going to get into too much detail of how to script and how to do programming, because I think that is a series in itself.
Yeah.
And for those of you who do have some coding experience, I'll quickly run through some of what all this means. So as you can see, we've got the standard imports from .NET. We've got systems.collections for collections like arrays and lists and stuff like that. We've got generic collections like IEnumerable collections, all that kind of stuff. We've got, this one's the most interesting though. So using Unity engine means that all of Unity's stuff, like access to changing the scale of objects in the game, changing what is happening on the screen, all of it is contained within this Unity engine namespace. So we can actually use using Unity engine.ai. There's loads of different modules in here. So there's Unity engine.ai. We've got audio stuff. There's events, all kinds of stuff here. Windows, VFX. So yeah. So that is just kind of giving us access to the Unity game engine within our code. Okay. Public class diamond bobbing. So this is just a class called diamond bobbing. We could change this to whatever we like as long as it matches with the file name. Mono behavior. So this is an interesting one. This actually defines. This tells Unity. It tells Unity, when it looks at this script, that this thing is something we can actually put onto a game object. So the reason we were talking about components quite a lot in the beginning was because of this. So what turns a script, like scripts are components that we can put onto a game object. How do we actually tell Unity that, hey, this is a script that I want to be able to put on a game object? This is how we tell mono behavior. We're saying this is a script that I can actually put onto an object. So with that thought in mind, how do we put a script onto an object? Well, if we click on this diamond here, if we want to play around with this diamond and we want to make it move up and down like this, we would click and drag and just drag this over to the inspector here. So we drag it to here, and now this diamond bobbing script is attached to this object. Okay. So that's how we can do it. The other way we can do it is doing add component, and we can go to scripts, and diamond bobbing is there, so we can click on it that way as well. But now, sorry, were you going to say something, Danny?
This is kind of, I don't know. So you can add create a new script through the add component area by just creating it by typing like the name of your script. Well, the way I normally do it is just typing the name and then you just add the component to the within the inspector. But we've already created the script, so
yeah. So just to give you an example, let's do something like move diamond something, or maybe we have a script called move character or something, right? We just click this new script button and it would create that script for us. So there's that way as well. But yeah, now we have this diamond bobbing script that is doing absolutely nothing, but it is attached. It is attached to our diamond, right? And if by the way some of this is quite confusing, don't worry about it. I mean, part of this stuff that we're going through is some of the most complicated stuff that people can't really get their head around. It just takes practice to kind of watch this, do some programming and stuff like that, and you hopefully should become kind of second nature to you. So we have this diamond here. We have two other diamonds, but as you can see, these don't have the diamond move script attached to them. So I'm clicking on these, they don't have it, but I click on this first one and we've got the diamond bobbing script attached to it. So anything we change in here is going to be affecting this diamond here. And we're going to get into that in a bit more detail, but let's go back to the code, right? So that's, if we missed out mono behavior here, it would not let us attach it to an object. I think we've got a question. It says, so I'm assuming that somewhere there is a sort of community bank of scripts that other people have made then. Yes, that's a good point. There are tons of places out there. I think there used to be a Unity community wiki that people used to upload scripts to. The best way I think now to find scripts, example scripts, is on GitHub itself. So people have made scripts for doing all kinds of stuff. I think you can get scripts on the asset store as well.
Well, Unity has their own tutorial kind of area within their website that kind of just talks about example kind of styles of game making and how to script them and how to create the games. So
yeah, I mean we talked about this at the beginning, but Unity has an incredible wealth of tutorials on their site. And I don't want to kind of say, oh, just watch their tutorials, because
that just makes ours kind of obsolete.
But if you want to supplement, you're learning with something else, that's a great place to go. But as for a community bank of scripts, Unity's documentation has tons of examples of how to do stuff on there. But as for an actual central place, there's GitHub, which is pretty good. You can find some pretty good examples of, say, for example, you wanted to make something that moves the camera around with the player. There's some good examples on there. I think there's the Unity community wiki, but all you have to really do is go to Google and just type in, Unity camera follow player script or something, and you'll find either something like a Stack Overflow answer or a GitHub page, or you'll find maybe the Unity tutorials themselves. So yeah, luckily there are tons of places to go find that kind of stuff, which I recommend, by the way. Like a lot of the stuff we're going through here, there will be some bits where you'll be like, oh, that's a bit confusing. Just have a Google, have a look around the subject. It should be fine. But okay, so I've talked quite a lot about attaching stuff and what mono behavior is. The reason I wanted to go through that is it's quite important to understand. We've talked about start. So start just runs code at the beginning of the game, and we have update. Now update is called once per frame. So this, a game has frames. So as we're playing the game, it's rendering a frame over and over and over again. We're continuously rendering once per frame. What update does, it allows us to do something every update. So what I'm going to do is just type debug.log, and I'm going to put hello, I have started, or something in here. So this is just going to show hello, I have started, right? And then I'll do hello, I have updated, right? So this is a very simple script. It does nothing really, and it doesn't make the diamond move at all, but it's just going to show the words hello, I have started and hello, I've updated in these two respective functions. So if we go back to Unity, it says, oh, compiling, all this kind of stuff. And then if we click on the console and we click play, you can see it says, hello, I have started once over here. And as you can see, hello, I have updated is going crazy. We've got this saying 3,000 times. And that's because every frame of this game, it's calling this function update. So that's really the difference between start and update. Start is only called once at the beginning. Update is called continuously throughout the game. So that's quite useful for what we want to do. So let's have a look at some other interesting stuff. So I'm going to leave this in here, just why not? But let's change this to time.time, right? So there are tons of different things like time.delta time, but just for what we're going to use, there's something called time.time, right? And if you highlight over it, it'll say the time at the beginning of this frame. So what does that mean? Well, it's easier to just show you what this does. So we're going to look at what the time is, time.time. Now, if we click play, okay, and this is in the update function, so it's going to be called continuously. You can see that this is counting up. It's going 2, 3, and then there's loads of more. I've just clicked on this accidentally, but as you can see, this is going 9, 10. So it's basically the number of seconds that have elapsed since the beginning of the game. And we can use that. That's quite interesting. It's something we can use in making these diamonds bob up and down. So there is also something else that we want to look at. Okay, now this is transform. If you use transform with a lower t, as you can see, this says the transform attached to this game object. Okay, so again, the reason we talk about game objects and components is to get used to this idea. So transform with a lowercase t means that the transform that is attached to this object. Okay, so in this case, what this transform means is for this diamond, the transform is this transform here. So it's the transform attached to the game object, the same game object that this script here is attached to. So this is going to be able to access this and change this value, which is what we want to do. So how do we do that? Well, if we have a look at transform.position, let's just have a look at this. We'll just very quickly press play. So let's click this. Let's have a look at the position. So as you can see, nothing. It's just saying -7.4, 4.30, and as you can see, that is what we have up here. If I move this, you can see that all it's doing is showing the current position. So that's what transform.position is. What we want to do is actually make this move, make it move up and down. So how do we do that? Well, what we can do is we can do something like this is where it kind of gets a bit interesting, and we can use mathf.syn of time.time, and this might be a bit confusing to you. So
oh no, not math.
Yeah, so this is the sine function, right? Now, as you know, a sine wave kind of goes up and down slowly, and the whole idea behind this is that is exactly what we want our object to do. We want it to go up and down slowly, like a sine wave. So if we put time.time in there, right, and then we look at the value that is spat out of this function, okay, and again, if you don't have much programming experience, this is probably quite daunting, but we are going to go through this hopefully in a bit more detail in the next few episodes. But as you can see, this is slowly going from -1 to 1, right? This is exactly what we want. We just want to set the position to something like this, and then we're good. We can make this go up and down. So the reason I talked about the start function is because what we're going to do is when the game starts, we're going to save the position of this diamond initially. So I'm going to type private vector3, and I'll talk more about what these are as we get close to the end, but private vector3 original position. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do original position. Original position equals transformed position. So what this is doing is it's saying that set this variable called original position to transformed position. And again, if you don't know what some of these things are, put variables and stuff like that, have a look at our series, and there are some resources out there, and hopefully in the next few episodes this should make a bit more sense. But all we're doing is we're making a vector 3. So a vector 3 is just something with an x, y, and z. That's all it is. Okay, it's just something that has an x, y, and a z. So a position in the game world, a speed, a velocity, something like that. That's all a vector 3 is. Okay, so
with vector 3, can't we do vector 2 is vector as well, because we are doing a 2D game? But
yes,
why use one or the other?
So yes, so it's a good question. Private vector 2, we can do that. There's vector 2 int, there's vector 4. I don't think there's a vector 5. And a vector 1 would just be a scalar value, which is just a float. So the reason we're using vector 3 is because, well, a couple of reasons. Firstly, this kind of future proofs if you wanted to change this into a 3D game for some reason, that would work too. But also, in some cases, 2D objects are actually, I think we mentioned this earlier in a previous episode, Unity kind of treats a 2D game as a 3D game. So 2D, this is very confusing.
I realize I put you on the spot a little.
No, it's okay. Like if you what's the word? If you're like working with a 2D game, and if this is quite confusing, don't worry about it, because to this day, years of Unity development, it confuses the hell out of me too.
Wasn't Unity originally made for 3D games, so it can throw some errors when you work with some 2D vectors?
It basically comes down to the fact that Unity was originally called Unity 3D, and it was for 3D games. Now, back then, people made 2D games by quite cleverly hacking around in the editor with going, okay, well, what I can do is I can set the camera to orthographic, right? So no depth. And I can actually stick sprites onto planes and move the planes around to make it look like a 2D game. And then Unity was like, hey, that's a brilliant idea. Why don't we just whack that into our engine exactly like that and call it a 2D game? And now, you have this issue with 2D games. Sometimes you can treat them in a 3D context like this. The real reason I didn't want to kind of get into this is I think if you do transform dot position, this thing here is a 3D position. So every game object, whether it's 2D game or 3D game, has a 3D position, which is quite confusing. Now, we could do something like get component, I think it's rect transform here, right? And then we could do dot position here. And now, even the position here is 3D. But it's
or just use vector 3.
just use vector 3. If that's all confusing, don't worry about it. Basically, we just have to use vector 3. But with rect transform 2Ds, we can use vector 2s. But internally, Unity just likes everything to be 3D, even if it's a 2D game. Also, in 2D games, the Z, so it kind of makes sense. So the Z value of a sprite kind of controls how far in front of other sprites it is. So I don't know if that's quite confusing, but sprites with a higher Z value are kind of behind other sprites. So I don't know if you've ever opened up something like PowerPoint where you've got, I don't know, some kind of circle in front of a square or something, and you can change
layering.
Yeah, it's like layering, right? You can select what layer that sits on, and that's what the Z value sometimes is used for. But basically, I don't really want to get much into it. We just have to use a 3D position, right? Even if it's a 2D game, we just have to use a 3D position. But okay, so we have something that has a 3D position, an X, Y, and Z, and it's called original position. When the game starts, we're going to set the value of that variable to the current position. So all we're doing is saving the initial position of the diamond into original position. So that's all we're doing, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to just do this. We're going to do transform.position. So the current position of the diamond. So that's what this is. I'll just do a little arrow to it so you don't forget. This is the current position. Okay, so we're setting the current position of the diamond to something, and we're setting it to in this case it's complaining because it says it can't convert float to vector3. That's fine. We're going to do original position, a bit confusing, plus vector3 dot up times by mathf dot sin time. So I'll talk more about what this means, right? So transform dot position, as you can see, is the current position of the diamond, and I think we might run over this session, but that's
fine. We can run over.
I mean, I think of all the sessions, this is the one that we were going to kind of run over on, because scripting is just,
it's a very key. It's a vital part of understanding how to build a game.
So anyway, so transform.position is just the current position of the diamond, right? So we're saying set the current position of that diamond to this stuff here on the right. Okay, so original position is the stuff that we originally saved, so the diamond's initial position. So when the game starts, we save that initial position of where it is. In this case, the initial position of this diamond is going to be this stuff here on the right. It's going to be -7 blah 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 4 and 0. This one, it's going to be -1 1 and 0. This one, it's going to be -4 -1.6 and 0. That's the initial position, right? Then what we're saying is set the current position to that original position plus vector3 dot up. So vector3 dot up just represents the up direction. So it's saying
that's where we want to go.
Yeah. Now it helps in this case to know a bit of kind of vector math, I guess. And all this is doing really is it's just saying that you want to move up and down, basically. We could do this a different way and set the position using new vector3, but I wanted to show you this because this kind of syntax of moving stuff around is what we're going to come across when we get time to move the character, for example. So I didn't want to go, some people who might know Unity in the audience might go, oh, hey, well, why aren't you just doing new vector3 and then add the original position component by component like a Hardemard product? Well, yes, we could do that, but doing it this way will get you used to moving a character. So all we're saying is we're adding. So essentially what we have here, again, to use this kind of thing, is here we have vector3.up, we have 0 1 0 times by mathf.sin. So say this stuff here, this mathf.sin time spits out minus 0.75, for example. Okay, now that is going to multiply this with that, and it's going to be this value here. Okay, so we're going to get, eventually we're going to get, say the original position is something like 3.14 and 6.1 or something. Actually, that's probably making it a little bit more difficult for my purposes. So and I know this is quite confusing sometimes, but this is just, we just have to get through it. But
a lot of this is mainly maths, though. So
yeah,
you should. I hope you have a general understanding of how maths works.
Again, I think vector math and games kind of go hand in hand. If you do struggle with this, luckily there are absolutely tons of resources out there online for this.
So much documentation explaining it all.
So originally we had this. We multiply this with this scalar value, and we get this vector here minus 0.75. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're adding this with this. So what happens? This position is going to go to that. Okay, because we're adding this with this. Okay, so we're adding 0 to this, which is 3.1. We're adding 0 to that one, which is 6.1. We're adding this, okay, to here. Now all of this 3.25. That's what's going on here. But if this stuff is confusing you,
and we're only moving one number because we're only just
Yeah.
going up and down.
Yeah, the whole idea of this vector
Got it.
3 dot up is we're not moving x and y, we're just moving the x and z, we're moving the
I got
X and
confused for a
Y.
second there.
Yeah. So that's what's happening here, and I know I'm explaining this quite extensively, but I just want to make the point that that's what's happening here. So this is our script for moving a diamond. Now, hopefully, and again, Adobe Reader has popped up as it always does.
As it always does.
Yeah. So we've wrote this script. Now, I don't know if this will actually work, but let's cross our fingers and hope that it does work. But in theory, it should work, right? We're saving the original position when we start. Then what we're doing is we're setting the current position to all this stuff. Anyway, let's see if this works. So we should be able to see if this diamond here is moving. So it's got the diamond bobbing script. These don't have the diamond bobbing script, so these aren't going to move. So I'm just going to click this play button, and we should see in the scene, as you can see, we've got a diamond moving up and down, right? So again, if I know we went through that quite quickly, but if you are struggling with that, go back and just try this bit by bit. I would recommend just play around with these. So for example, what happens if we change it to, instead of vector 3 dot up, vector 3 dot left? So what is vector 3 dot left? Well, as you can see here, it's -1, 0, 0. What's that going to do? So let's try that. And I think the best way to kind of learn this kind of stuff is just to try different values and place with stuff around. If we use vector 3 dot left, now we're moving it left to right, and that's a bit weird.
That does not look right.
No.
But I don't know why a diamond going up and down looks more right than it going left to right.
Yeah. So we've wrote a very basic script, and that's all good. Okay. So the next thing I want to do with this script is just give us a little bit more control, because at the moment the diamond kind of moves a bit weird, like it works. I'm just going to move this game here so we don't have to worry about it and we can look at the scene. Let's just play this game and let's look at this diamond, right? So this diamond is moving quite a bit too smooth, a bit too up and down for me. Like it's going
a bit too up and down.
Bit too up and down. Like it's going too far up, it's going too far down. So how can we control that, right? So if we go here, we could, for example, we could change this in here, time.time times by, I don't know, 15. 15 is probably a bit too much, actually. Let's do 2. Okay, so let's see what this does. If we times the time by a value, it will increase the frequency of that sine wave. So it will go more frequent, right? So if we change this to 5, oh, geez. If we change this to 5, what it's going to do is it's going to be very fast now. It's going to go up and down very fast, right? So let's, as you can see, that's,
wow.
So this thing, basically, this value here is the frequency of that sine wave, okay? Now, what if we want to change how far up and down it goes? Well, we can actually time all of this, right, by something like 2. Let's try 2 again. So what does this do, right? If we times this by 2, this is going to move even more. So that's not what we want, but I'm just going to show you. So that is clearly not what we want, right? So
that diamond's having some fun.
Yeah. So we can change this to 0.1. So now we're making it smaller, right? We're making that movement smaller. So if I click play again, you'll see that now we should start to get something more like what we're looking for. That looks quite nice, in my opinion. That's moving just enough to look like it's collectible, right? So that, in my opinion, looks brilliant, right? Now, why am I doing this? Why am I showing you we can change these values and make it move around? Well, let's have a look at this. If I click on this, right, now, wouldn't it be great if there was something here in this script where I could just change the values of this 5 and this 0.1 in here? So I won't have to keep going back here and going, oh, maybe let's try 3. Oh, let's try 1. Let's try 2. Wouldn't it be good if I could just change them from here instead? It would just make so much more sense, right? I could just
it'd make
here.
life easier as well.
Yeah, much easier, right? I wouldn't have to keep swapping back to Visual Studio and back again. So is there a way we can do this? Well, some of you might think, oh, well, we can just use a variable, right? And you'd be right. So let's put frequency in here, okay, and let's put magnitude in here. Or you could call these whatever. You could call this like, I don't know, quickness. I don't think that's a word. You could call this like amount of up and down or something.
We're so great at naming things.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrible. So how do you? So you could do this, right? We have another variable here. We could call it frequency, and we could set it to 2.5 or something, and we could do the same for magnitude, right? And yes, we save it. It's all great. Let's go here, and nothing should appear. So this hasn't solved our problem at all, right? We have variables, but all we're going to have to do now is change these variables. So how do we actually get these things, these variables here, to show up in the editor so we can actually start editing them in Unity itself rather than the script? Well, it's very easy. You just set it to public instead of
your
private.
Camera battery died there, Ben.
My camera battery has died. Oh no.
Oh no.
It's okay. Don't worry. It's probably better for people in this stream. They didn't see my face. So just ignore that. I think it's because we've run over. But yeah, don't worry about that. Just listen to the sweet tones of my voice instead. Anyway, yeah. So all we've done is we changed it to public instead of private. If we set these variables to public, suddenly, look here on the right where my cursor is. We now have two variables that we can change. We can change the values in the editor itself, right? And this is one of the coolest things I love about Unity is that we can do this kind of stuff. Because in games we want to tweak, all kinds of stuff. So this is too much, right? I can change this in the editor down to 0.2, for example, or 0.1, which is what we had before. And I can dial this frequency up to 30, for example. Or I can send it to 1. But the point is, right, is that we don't have to go back and forth, editing stuff and that. But now, we can change this to whatever we like. So let's put it at 10 and 0.1 because I think that works quite well. You also might notice as well. So these are 10 and 0.1. Now, when I click play to stop, these change back to 2 and 3. That's just how Unity is. You just kind of have to get used to it. But now, yeah, we can change these variables from the editor itself. And this has been also, I'm going to save this before we forget. But if I play this, right, we have something that we can tweak, and it's just moving this diamond up and down. Now, we have gone through quite a lot in this. So if you are a bit confused, I understand. We have gone through quite a lot here. My advice is to kind of go back through it. Go through this process yourself, change stuff about it, and also, supplement your learning with other tutorials and stuff on like C# and stuff. But yeah, really, that's what I wanted to show you about scripting is that we're moving a diamond by changing the current position of it to its original position plus up times by a sine wave and some variables, and we can change these variables in the editor. So this has served as a very, very basic introduction to scripting, right? I don't want to get into too much detail in it, but we will be touching scripts a bit more, and it might make a bit more sense in the later episodes. I think we've kind of gone through it a bit fast here, but like I said, it should become more clear. If you didn't understand what this code does, don't worry about it. I just kind of wanted to show you that, hey, look, we can actually make stuff move around on screen. And yeah, just honestly, just try all this stuff out. Try change it, work with it, and it should be fine. But that's pretty much how you do scripts, right? So what we can do now, for example, is we can go to this script, and this is where we kind of get back into prefab. So now we have 3 diamonds, right, in our game. One of them is moving. We want the other 2 to move as well at the same rate. So I could click on these 2, and yes, I could add these, and I could set them to 10 and 0.1, and that works. Brilliant. That's all good. And now that they're all moving, right? They're all moving in time. That's brilliant. So there are the last thing I want to look at is prefabs. Now we've talked about prefabs and why they're useful. Now I talked about this problem of, we have 3 diamonds and we want to change properties of these 3 diamonds for each one. So say, for example, we had 500 diamonds. I'd have to copy this script, or say, for example, right, these 3 diamonds, I want to make them twice as fast. I could change this to 20, and then I could go here and change this to 20 as well, right? And I could change this to 20 as well. Okay, that's fair. But if I have 1,000 diamonds in this scene and I have another scene that has another 1,000 diamonds in it, I'm going to be here all day, right? And as a games developer and a lazy person, I like to cut corners of my time. So how do we solve that? And this is exactly the purpose of prefabs. Okay, so the idea behind a prefab, it's I think conceptually it's quite hard to grasp, but when you show somebody how prefabs works, it makes a lot more sense. But prefabs solve this problem. Okay, so we could change these individually, but it takes time. Or, if we wanted to make some changes to this diamond other than the script, like its appearance or something, we want to do that across all the diamonds in the game. So how do we do that very quickly in one step? That's what prefabs are for. The word prefab actually comes from the word prefabricated. So, building a house quite quickly with pre-made parts, that's kind of the idea behind prefabs. But you can think of a prefab as a template for something. So the idea is there's going to be loads of coins that are going to look exactly the same and going to behave exactly the same throughout your levels. Okay. What you can do is you can make one kind of me and Danny were talking about this beforehand, and Danny had a really good analogy, which, to be honest, I'll let Danny.
Was this the car analogy?
Well, there's the car analogy. There's I think the master slide PowerPoint.
Oh yeah, okay. Analogy. I think the master slide, the PowerPoint one, will probably be a good one, because I'm hoping a lot of people have probably used PowerPoint. So when you want to create a slide and you want it to look exactly the same, so for example, we want to create a lecture slide that has the university logo on the top right of each slide. Well, you could just duplicate the same slide over and over again, but the same thing happened. It's just tedious work. Or you could go to the master slide and create a template of the slide with the logo on the top that applies to all of the slides that you are creating. So it creates that template with that component in, rather than you having to do it each time, and it's a lot of tedious work, or you having to create an individual sprite and edit that individual element and create those and add those different styles or colors or everything. So that's kind of what prefabs are. They're like that master slide where it's the overall template and the overall kind of has everything that you just created, and you can just use it again and again.
That's almost.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. That's almost exactly what it's like. You're making a master template for what a coin is, or what a diamond is, or even what a character or an enemy looks like. Okay, so take for example Super Mario World. There's tons of Goomba enemies in there, or what they called why has this word escaped me? The Koopa Troopers, right? The Koopa Troopers. They exist. They exist throughout all the levels in the game, right? They all look the same. They all behave the same way. They all damage you. They all work the same way. So what we do is we create a template, almost like as Danny said, a master slide, a master template for that enemy, or for that coin, for that diamond. Okay. And then you drag that template into the level. Okay. So now when you want to make a change that affects all of those enemies across all the levels and all the coins or whatever, you modify the template itself. And boom, it just changes all of them across all the levels. So easy. You don't have to go around clicking through each and changing them individually. You can just make one change on the template and it works throughout them all. And that is the power of prefabs. It's such a good thing. So what we need in our case is we need a diamond prefab that defines what a diamond looks like, how it behaves. And then what we need to do is actually use that prefab to put diamonds in our level. So I suppose the first question you might ask is, how do we make a prefab? Okay, so there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can right click here and go to create and create prefab, or you can do it the way most people do, like for example me and Danny. You do the exact same thing. So what you do is, I'm just going to delete these 2 diamonds for now. Let's call this diamond. All it's as easy as this, right? You look at what you'd like, so you get the diamond in here, and we click play. We're like, okay, is this diamond doing exactly what we want it to? Yes, it is. So we want every diamond to look like this. We click and we drag into the project folder. So when we click and drag from the hierarchy to the project, it's going to create a prefab for us. If we do it the opposite way and we go from the project to the hierarchy, it's putting something in the level as we have done. But when you drag something from the hierarchy to a folder in the project folder, it creates a prefab. And as you can see, this is called diamond.prefab. So this is a prefab. And as you've probably noticed, this is blue, right? Now, when something's blue in the hierarchy, or at least I hope it's blue because I'm very colorblind.
It is blue.
It is okay. So when it's blue, right, this is saying that this thing here is a prefab. As you can see, it's got a little prefab menu here. It's got open select. It's saying that this thing is actually part of a template for a diamond. Okay, so now we can do the same thing. We can duplicate this diamond. Okay? We can pop it down here. For example, we can pop another one here. Okay. And now, yeah, sure, they're all working the same. So if we click on this, we now have 3 diamonds which are using the same template for a diamond. Okay. So what we can do is, if we want to make these move twice as fast, for example, you can actually quite easily, what you're meant to do is open the prefab itself and modify the prefab. So if I change the speed on this one, for example, to 20, and we go to these other 2, they're still on 10. So you're probably thinking, what are you talking about, Ben? This is on 20 and this is on 10. You haven't modified them at all, and you'd be right. But how do we do it? How do we modify the actual template, the prefab itself? Okay, so you can click this little arrow here, and this will open up the prefab for the diamond. There's many ways of doing this. So you can click there on the little arrow, and it will open up as you can see, it fades all of this out and shows that, hey, you're now editing the template for a diamond, not a diamond itself. Okay. You can open the prefab here. So you can click prefab open here, and it does the same thing. And then you click here to go back. You can also double click on the prefab here, and it allows you to modify the prefab in this sense. I like to use this style. So you use the little arrow, and hey, now if I swap this to 20, it's modified the entire template of things. So if I go back, now our diamonds have 20, right? Which is great. So if for example, we now have 3 diamonds in our scene, and they're running twice as fast, and I think, oh, that's quite fast. I actually want them to be quite slow. So maybe 5 is best. So I can just open the prefab, I can modify the value, and then go back and click play. Oh, I don't think I actually applied the changes there. No, my bad. Ben. Yeah, I think, yeah, I've kind of overridden. So just ignore that part. But yeah, so. But yeah, that's the idea. Is you open up the prefab, you modify the prefab, and then you're modifying the template for a diamond. Now we've mentioned. I've been constantly talking. You're probably sick of me saying the word prefab and all this kind of stuff. But I'm just trying to stress that we're going to come across prefabs quite a lot, and they are such an important part of games development. I mean, you think of it. There's classes of things for coins, characters, enemies, all kinds of stuff throughout the entire game that are common, and you may need to modify them. So whenever you have something that is used across many levels, like a coin or an enemy, and it's common throughout all of the levels, they all behave the same, they all look the same, that's what we want to use. We want a prefab, a template for that kind of thing. But that's a very basic introduction to prefabs. There are more complicated things, which I think we'll probably cover maybe next time, such as prefab variants, which is kind of like a prefab of a prefab. Well, kind of. It's like a prefab that depends on a prefab. So, for example, you could have a character prefab, and then you could make 7 versions of that character, one with a yellow costume, one with a blue costume, one with a red costume, which are variants of the character prefab. But then if you modify the character prefab, it's going to reflect those changes in the ones with the yellow and the blue and the red costume. Now, again, if that's confusing, don't worry. We'll cover it
We'll
later
go
on.
through it.
Yeah. But I think we have run over time here, but I think it was kind of expected with the stuff
Especially
we're covering.
with going through scripting and prefabs, we wanted to make sure that you understood it and we were clear and kind of went through it in a little bit. Maybe we went in a lot of detail, so it might be harder to consume, but we wanted to make sure that all the information was there for you.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I don't like to run over time, but in this case, it's important to run over time.
It was a must.
Yeah, I think with scripting, again, if you're still a little bit confused, I would say that's natural. I mean, we've introduced quite a lot in one session, and there was no chance that at the end of this you'd just be like, oh, I'm amazing at scripting and stuff. But don't worry too much about the syntax. Don't worry about what public means. Don't mean about void. Don't even worry about like what this transformed position is. Just think about what this is doing. This is setting the current position to the original position plus vector 3, blah, blah, blah. And I think we described this in quite a lot of detail, but I would recommend, if you want to do a little bit more scripting, copy this out and try play with it. There are other things you can do, like we have a course on programming, so if you want to have a look at how to get into programming and you want an even gentler guide of how to script, have a look at our Python series, which should give you a better idea of that. But there are also a lot of resources out there online, so just have a look, see. But yeah, they're the 2 things really wanted to cover was prefabs. Hopefully that all makes sense. Scripting maybe a bit iffy, but hopefully that all makes sense too. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
I think we'll sum it up for today. I think we've gone on long enough. So, thank you everyone for watching the 3rd session of the Ben and Danni show, and we hope to see you again on Thursday for our 4th session. Mm-hmm. I've got a note. If you are a student at the University of Lincoln, you are watching this as a part of the Festival of Learning, please take part in our evaluation survey of the Festival of Learning. You can find out more in the comments below. And so thank you for coming here today, and we'll hope to see you on Thursday. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. I promise I'm waving here. Oh dear.